The stars had never been more peaceful. Admiral Hyunwoo Park stood on the observation deck of Terra Prime Station, watching ships from dozens of worlds dock peacefully at the massive spaceport. 3,000 years had passed since the last war. 3,000 years since humanity had fired a shot in anger. Children from 23 different species played together in the station's central park. Their laughter echoed through the artificial atmosphere as they chased each other around flowering trees brought from Earth. A young human girl with bright eyes ran past, followed by a small blue creature with 6 legs and a crystalline being that sparkled in the artificial sunlight. "Beautiful sight, isn't it?" Dr. So-Min Lee approached the Admiral, her peaceful expression matching the scene before them. She was the head of the Galactic Peace Institute, a woman who had spent her entire life building bridges between species. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple style, and her clothes were the soft blue of the diplomatic corps. "It is," Admiral Park replied. His uniform bore no weapons, only symbols of peace and protection. The human military had become something different over the centuries. They were now protectors and helpers, not warriors. "Hard to believe our ancestors once conquered half the galaxy." So-Min nodded. She had read the old histories, the dark tales of human expansion across the stars. Back then, humans had been feared throughout the galaxy. Other species would surrender rather than face human soldiers in battle. But those days were long gone. Humanity had chosen a different path. "My daughter is excited about tomorrow's field trip," So-Min said, changing the subject to something happier. "Ji-Yoon has been talking about visiting the agricultural moon for weeks. She wants to see how different species grow their food." Admiral Park smiled. "The Multi-Species Academy is one of our greatest achievements. When I see those children playing together, I know we made the right choice all those years ago." On the other side of the station, Captain Tae-Hyun Kim was docking his exploration vessel, the Gentle Dawn. His ship was small and fast, designed for discovery rather than destruction. The captain was young for his position, but he had proven himself time and again as a skilled explorer and diplomat. Another quiet patrol, his first officer, Lieutenant Jin-Ho Park, reported as they secured the ship. "Sector 7 is completely peaceful. The trading routes are busy, and we didn't encounter a single problem." Captain Kim nodded as he signed the patrol report. "Good. That's how it should be." He looked out the viewport at the beautiful blue-green world below them. New. Terra was humanity's second home, a world of peace and learning. Universities and research centers covered the surface, sharing knowledge with beings from across the galaxy. In the depths of space, far beyond the reach of any telescope, something ancient stirred. The Velthari had been watching and waiting. Their ships moved through the darkness between galaxies like predators stalking prey. They were old, older than any species in the known galaxy, and they were hungry. Supreme Overlord Kethmore stood in the command chamber of his massive vessel. His body was tall and thin, covered in dark scales that seemed to absorb light. His eyes glowed with a cold intelligence as he studied the reports his scouts had brought him. "The humans have grown soft," his advisor, War Prime Veltox, reported. 3,000 years of peace have made them weak. Their military is small and ceremonial. They have forgotten how to fight." Kethmore's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Perfect. We will take what we need from them, and they will be too weak to stop us." Back on Terra Prime Station, the Festival of Unity was beginning. Representatives from every species in the Galactic Federation had come to celebrate another year of peace. The station's main hall was decorated with banners and symbols from hundreds of worlds. Music filled the air, a beautiful blend of melodies from across the galaxy. Admiral Park gave the opening speech, his words carried to every corner of human space. "Today we celebrate not just peace, but understanding. We celebrate the choice our ancestors made to put down their weapons and pick up tools of creation instead of destruction." The crowd cheered, a sound that mixed human voices with the musical tones of the ethereal, the clicking languages of the Insectoid Alliance, and dozens of other forms of communication. It was a symphony of unity that would have been impossible in the old days of war and conquest. Dr. So-Min Lee sat in the audience, watching her daughter Ji-Eun perform with her class. The children had prepared a special presentation about friendship and cooperation. Ji-yoon stood confidently at the front of the group, her voice clear as she spoke about hope for the future. "We are the children of peace," Ji-yoon said, her words, translated instantly for all the different species listening. "We will carry forward the dream of unity that our parents built for us." So-min felt tears in her eyes. This was what they had worked so hard to create. A generation that had never known war, that saw other species as friends rather than enemies. Ji-yoon and her classmates represented the best of what the galaxy could be. Captain Kim attended the festival with his crew. They watched the celebration with pride, knowing that their peaceful patrols helped maintain this beautiful world. The captain thought about his own childhood, growing up on a world where humans and aliens worked side by side in perfect harmony. "Sir," Lieutenant Park said quietly, "I sometimes wonder what it was like in the old days, when humans were warriors instead of peacekeepers." Captain Kim shook his head. "Those days are better left in the past, Lieutenant. We're better than that now." Far in the outer rim of the galaxy, Velthari scouts were already moving. Their ships were dark and silent, invisible to the peaceful sensors that humans used to monitor space. They had been studying human colonies for months, learning about their defenses and their weaknesses. The scouts had been particularly interested in the children. Young beings from multiple species, all gathered together in schools and academies across human space. To the Velthari, these children represented something valuable. They could be shaped, molded, turned into perfect servants for their empire. Overlord. Kethmore reviewed the scout reports with satisfaction. The humans had made themselves vulnerable by caring so much about their young. They had created a weakness that could be exploited. "Begin the first phase," he commanded. "We will show them the price of their softness." As the Festival of Unity continued on Terra Prime Station, none of the celebrating beings knew that their peaceful world was about to change forever. The children laughed and played. Their parents watched with love and pride, and the ships of the human fleet drifted peacefully through space. Dr. So-min Lee hugged her daughter after the performance, holding her tight without knowing why she suddenly felt the need to do so. Ji-yoon laughed and pulled away, eager to rejoin her friends from other worlds. She ran off to play, her voice mixing with the alien sounds of her classmates. Admiral Park concluded the festival with a traditional human blessing for peace. "May our children never know the sound of weapons firing in anger," he said. "May they inherit a galaxy where love conquers fear and understanding defeats hatred." The crowd dispersed slowly, reluctant to end such a perfect day. Parents gathered their children, delegates returned to their ships, and the great station settled into its night cycle. The artificial stars dimmed to match the rhythm of Earth's old sky, and beings from across the galaxy went to sleep in perfect safety. In the darkness between the stars, the Velthari fleet moved closer. Their time of waiting was almost over. Soon they would test whether humanity's 3,000 years of peace had truly made them weak, or if something darker still lurked beneath their gentle surface. The last day of true peace in the galaxy was ending. Tomorrow, everything would change. The agricultural moon of serenity was exactly what its name promised. Rolling green fields stretched to the horizon under a gentle yellow sun. Crops from dozens of worlds grew side by side, tended by farmers who had learned to work together despite their differences. Ji-yoon Lee pressed her face against the transport window as their ship approached the landing pad. Around her, 847 students from the Multi-Species Academy chattered excitedly in their various languages. This field trip was the highlight of their semester. "Look at those grain towers," her friend Nara pointed with one of her 4 arms. The young Centauri girl's blue skin sparkled with excitement. "They're huge." Beside them, Corvin hummed in harmony, his crystalline body reflecting the sunlight in rainbow patterns. The young being communicated through musical tones that their universal translators converted to words. "The biosensors show incredible diversity in the soil composition," he sang. Lila floated in her environmental suit, the aquatic child's excitement visible through the water that surrounded her. Her people breathed liquid instead of air, but that had never stopped her from joining every academy adventure. Ji-eun smiled at her friends. At 15, she was one of the older students on the trip, and she felt responsible for some of the younger children. Her mother had always taught her that humans had a special duty to protect others. "Remember to stay with your groups," teacher Sung-ho Kim announced as they disembarked. The elderly human had been leading these trips for 20 years, and his calm voice carried the authority of experience. "We'll start with the grain processing center, then move to the animal farms." The children formed their mixed species groups and began exploring. Ji-eun's group included beings from 7 different worlds, all chattering about what they were seeing. The farms were beautiful, with automated systems working alongside traditional methods to produce food for the entire sector. Commander Bo-ram Choi watched from the defense station Haven's Shield, orbiting high above Serenity. Her small force of 12 peacekeeping vessels was more symbolic than practical. In 3,000 years, they had never faced a real threat. "Quiet day," her tactical officer, Lieutenant Min-jun Song, reported. "All shipping traffic is normal. The Academy transport arrived on schedule." Commander Choi nodded, reviewing routine reports on her display. Trade ships moved peacefully through the system, carrying goods and passengers between the colonies. Everything was exactly as it should be. Then space tore open. The Velthari ships emerged from hyperspace like nightmares made real. Their vessels were dark and twisted, covered in organic growths that pulsed with sickly light. The largest ship was the size of a city, its hull bristling with weapons that had never been seen in this galaxy. "Unknown vessels, identify yourselves," Commander Choi transmitted on all frequencies. Her heart was racing, but her voice remained steady. In peacetime, most problems could be solved with communication. The response came not in words, but in weapons fire. Beams of corrupted energy lanced out from the alien ships, striking Haven's Shield before the human crew could even raise their defensive barriers. The station's hull cracked, and atmosphere began streaming into space. "All ships! Emergency protocol!" Commander Choi shouted into her communicator. "We are under attack! Repeat, we are under attack!" Her small fleet moved to intercept, but they were explorers and peacekeepers, not warriors. Their light weapons barely scratched the alien hulls, while return fire tore through their ships like paper. On Serenity's surface, Teacher Kim heard the emergency sirens and looked up to see lights flashing in the sky. His communicator crackled. With panicked voices from orbit, "All Academy personnel, return to the transport immediately," he commanded, but it was already too late. Dark shapes descended from the sky. Velthari landing craft touched down around the farm complex, disgorging creatures that moved like living nightmares. They were tall and thin, covered in scales that seemed to absorb light. Their movements were quick and precise, like predators, who had done this many times before. The alien soldiers carried weapons that fired nets of energy. When the nets touched the children, they collapsed immediately, their bodies going limp as some kind of drug took effect. "Run!" Teacher Kim shouted, pushing his students toward the transport. But the children were scattered across the farms, and there was no time to gather them all. Ji-eun saw a group of younger students huddled behind a grain storage unit. A Velthari soldier was approaching them, its weapon raised. Without thinking, she ran toward them. "Get away from them!" She screamed, throwing herself between the alien and the children. The creature looked at her with cold, intelligent eyes. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding metal. "You will all serve the Empire. Resistance is futile." The energy net struck. Ji-eun, and darkness closed over her mind. Across the galaxy, alarms were sounding on Terra Prime Station. Admiral Hyun-woo Park rushed to the command center, his peaceful uniform suddenly feeling inappropriate for what was happening. "Report!" he demanded. "Serenity Moon is under attack," the communications officer replied, her voice shaking. "Commander Choi's last transmission indicated unknown hostiles. We've lost contact with the entire system." Admiral Park felt something cold settle in his stomach. In 3,000 years, those words had never been spoken. "Send the nearest patrol vessels immediately." "Sir, the nearest combat-capable ships are 6 hours away. Then send everything we have." Dr. So-min Lee was in her office at the Peace Institute when her personal communicator started screaming. The emergency tone was one she had never heard before, one that hadn't been used in centuries. "Dr. Lee, please report to Admiral Park immediately," the voice said. There has been an incident involving the Academy field trip. So-Min's blood turned to ice. She ran through the corridors of the station, her mind refusing to accept what she was hearing. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not to the children. She found Admiral Park in the command center, his face gray with shock. Around him, officers were frantically trying to re-establish contact with Serenity. "What happened to my daughter?" So-Min asked, her voice barely a whisper. Admiral Park turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before. It wasn't just concern or worry. It was something darker, something that reminded her of the old stories about humanity's warrior past. "They took them," he said quietly. "All of them. 847 children from 23 different species." The command center fell silent. On the main screen, a message began playing. It was broadcast on all frequencies, in every language known to the galaxy. The image showed a tall, dark creature with glowing eyes. Its voice was cold and precise as it spoke. "I am Supreme Overlord Kethmore of the Velthari Empire. We have taken your spawn. They will serve us well in our expansion across this galaxy. Any attempt to rescue them will result in their consumption." The message repeated 3 times, then cut to images of the children in strange pods, unconscious but alive. Ji-Un was visible among them, her peaceful face slack with whatever drug they had used. "We will find them," Admiral Park said, his voice carrying a tone that hadn't been heard from human lips in 3 millennia. "We will bring them home." Captain Tae-Hyun Kim received the emergency transmission while patrolling the outer rim. His small exploration vessel wasn't equipped for combat, but he immediately changed course toward Serenity. "Sir, what are your orders?" Lieutenant Park asked. Captain Kim looked at the tactical display, calculating distances and time. "Plot a course for the Serenity system, maximum speed." "Sir, our ship isn't equipped for a rescue mission. Then we'll improvise." Across human space, similar conversations were taking place on every ship, every station, every colony. The children were gone, taken by an enemy that no one had seen coming. On Terra Prime Station, Admiral Park convened an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from 23 species gathered in the Great Hall, their faces showing shock and fear. "The Velthari have violated every principle of civilized behavior," Admiral Park announced. "They have taken our children, all of our children." "Admiral," the ethereal representative spoke in their musical language, "perhaps negotiation would be wiser than confrontation. We have maintained peace for 3,000 years. Admiral Park was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried an edge that made several delegates step backward. "They took our children," he repeated. "There will be no negotiation." In the depths of Terra Prime Station, ancient blast doors began to open for the first time in 3 millennia. Master Archivist Jin-Soo Han descended into levels that most people had forgotten existed. His hands shook as he entered the access codes that had been passed down through generations of archivists. The vaults contained humanity's dark heritage, weapon specifications, battle tactics, records of campaigns that had once made the galaxy tremble at the mention of human names. Admiral Park stood before the sealed entrance to the deepest vault. The warning signs were in a dozen languages, all saying the same thing. "Authorized personnel only. Extreme danger. Weapons of war." He pressed his palm to the scanner and spoke his authorization code. The massive door slowly ground open, revealing corridors that hadn't seen light in 3,000 years. "Sir," Jin-Soo said quietly, "are you sure about this? Once we open these, the ancient vaults beneath Terra Prime Station had been sealed for good reason." Master Archivist Jin-Soo Han walked beside Admiral Park through corridors lined with warning symbols. The air was stale and cold, untouched by circulation systems, for 3,000 years. "The historical records are in the first section," Jin-Soo explained, his voice echoing in the empty space. "Combat manuals, tactical analyses, psychological profiles of human soldiers during the Conquest Wars." Admiral Park stopped before a massive wall display. With a touch of his hand, it came to life, showing images that seemed impossible to believe. Human soldiers stormed alien strongholds, their faces painted with war markings. Battle cries echoed through enemy halls as Marines advanced with weapons that had been banned for millennia. "This is what we were," Park whispered, watching footage of his ancestor. Admiral Dong-hyun Park, leading the siege of the Mordak homeworld. The enemy had surrendered after just 3 days, terrified by the fury of human assault troops. "Sir," Jinsu said carefully, "these weapons and tactics were outlawed by the peace accords. Using them would violate every treaty we've signed." Admiral Park turned away from the screen. His peaceful expression had changed. There was something harder in his eyes now, something that his ancestors would have recognized. "The Velthari violated something more important than treaties," he said. "They took our children." On the civilian levels of the station, Dr. So-min Lee sat in her daughter's empty room. Ji-yeon's belongings were scattered around. Books about alien cultures, models of different starships, pictures of her friends from the academy. The room still smelled like her daughter's favorite flowers. So-min's hands trembled as she held a photo of Ji-yeon at her 15th birthday party. The girl was surrounded by friends from a dozen different species, all of them laughing and happy. Now they were all gone, taken by creatures that saw them as property to be claimed. Her personal communicator chimed. It was her brother, Colonel Min-ho Lee, calling from the military district. "So-min, I've been activated for emergency duty." His voice was tense. "They're recalling all officers with combat training from the old families." The old families. So-min knew what that meant. Before humanity chose peace, certain bloodlines had been known for their military genius. Her own ancestor, General Yoonji Lee, had conquered 7 star systems in a single campaign 3,000 years ago. "I want to help," So-min said. "I won't sit here while my daughter is missing. You're a diplomat, not a soldier. I'm a mother, and I remember the old stories our grandmother told us." Min-ho was quiet for a moment. "Report to Section 7 tomorrow at 800. Bring civilian clothes. We're going to need every advantage we can get." General Yoojin Seo emerged from 30 years of retirement like a ghost returning from the past. Her family estate on the outer colonies had been peaceful for decades, but now she moved through its halls with purpose that hadn't been seen since. Her great-grandmother commanded the feared Iron Wolves Battalion. Her aide, Major Kwan Ho Jung, found her in the memorial hall, standing before portraits of ancestors who had once struck fear into alien hearts. "The recall orders came through, General," he reported. "Fleet Command is requesting your immediate return to active duty." Yoojin studied the portrait of her great-grandmother, a woman whose tactical brilliance had been legendary. The Iron Wolves had never lost a battle, never left a comrade behind, never shown mercy to those who threatened the innocent. "How long since we've had active warships?" she asked. 30 years since the last one was decommissioned. But the mothball. Yards still have over 200 vessels in storage. Then we'll wake them up, all of them. Engineer Woo Seok Jang worked frantically in the orbital shipyards above New Terra. Around him, civilian ships were being retrofitted with military hardware that hadn't been manufactured in centuries. The work was dangerous and exhausting, but no one complained. These pleasure cruisers were never designed for weapons systems. His assistant, Engineer Haewon Kim, warned as they installed missile launchers on a luxury liner. "Then we'll make them work anyway," Woo-seok replied, sweat dripping from his forehead. "The children don't have time for perfect engineering." Dr. Haewon Kim, a xenobiologist who had spent her career studying peaceful contact between species, now bent her expertise toward a darker purpose. In her laboratory, she analyzed every scrap of data about Velthari physiology that the defense sensors had captured. "Their exoskeletons show weakness at the joint connections," she reported to the military briefing. "Their nervous systems appear to be vulnerable to sonic disruption, and they seem to have difficulty with bright lights." This transformation of human space was swift and terrifying. On every world, in every system, people who had lived their entire lives in peace began preparing for war. Ancient weapon designs were pulled from historical archives. Training manuals that had gathered dust for millennia became required reading. Captain Taehyun Kim arrived at Serenity to find the moon scarred by alien landing craft. His small exploration vessel, the Gentle Dawn, had been joined by every available ship in the sector. They searched through the wreckage of the farms looking for survivors. "Sir, we found Teacher Kim," Lieutenant Park reported. "He's badly injured but alive." In the medical bay, Teacher Sung-ho Kim struggled to speak through his injuries. "They were so fast," he whispered. The children didn't have a chance. They used some kind of drug that made them collapse instantly. How many? Captain Kim asked. All of them. 847 students. They loaded them into pods on their ships. Captain Kim felt something twist in his chest. He had known some of those children personally. Ji-yeon Lee had been on his ship just months ago, asking endless questions about exploration and discovery. We'll find them, he promised. Back in the vaults beneath Terra Prime Station, Admiral Park studied tactical manuals that detailed the complete destruction of enemy civilizations. The humans of the past had not believed in half measures. When they went to war, they fought until their enemies could never threaten anyone again. Sir, a technician called out, we've found the weapons manufacturing specifications, everything from personal combat gear to planet-killer bombs. Admiral Park nodded grimly. Begin production immediately. We'll need everything. Dr. So-min Lee stood in the armory, wearing combat gear for the first time in her life. The black uniform felt strange on her body, but somehow right. Her ancestors had worn similar clothes when they carved their names into galactic history. The Velthari think we're weak because we chose peace, she said to her brother's special operations team. They're about to learn that peace was a choice, not a limitation. Colonel Minho Lee looked at his sister with new respect. The gentle diplomat was gone, replaced by someone harder and more dangerous. What's your assessment of their psychological profile? They're predators who see other species as prey, So-min replied. They've never faced a species that could hunt them back. That's about to change. The alien species in the Galactic Council watched humanity's transformation with growing alarm. Representatives from peaceful worlds that had known nothing but safety under human protection began to whisper among themselves. This isn't the humanity we know, the ethereal ambassador said. In an emergency session, they're becoming something else. They're becoming what they used to be, replied the ancient keeper of the crystal archives. Before they chose peace, humans were the most feared warriors in the galaxy. Other species would surrender entire star systems rather than face human. Soldiers in battle. But why now? Why this response? The keeper's crystalline form pulsed with remembered knowledge. Because someone touched their children. In all the old records, in all the stories of human conquest, there was one thing that could transform them from explorers into destroyers. Threaten their young, and humans become something beyond reason or mercy. General Eugene Seo stood on the bridge of the reactivated battleship Vengeance, watching as her fleet assembled. 200 warships that had been sleeping in mothballs were now crewed by volunteers whose ancestors had once painted the stars red with enemy blood. Fleet status? She asked her operations officer. All ships report ready for combat operations. General. Weapon systems are online and crews have completed accelerated combat training. Eugene looked out at the assembled fleet. These ships bore names like Righteous Fury, Child's Guardian, and Mercy's End. They had been built for one purpose, and that purpose had awakened from its long sleep. Signal all ships, she commanded. Operation Child's Return begins now. We hunt until we find them. We fight until they're free. And we don't stop until every Velthari learns why their ancestors feared the sound of human voices. In the depths of space, Velthari scouts detected the mobilization of human forces. They transmitted their reports back to Overlord Kethmore with growing concern. The humans are moving faster than we anticipated, War Prime Veltox reported. Their response is more aggressive than our projections indicated. Overlord Kethmore studied the tactical displays showing human ships spreading throughout their territory. Something cold moved in his ancient heart. Perhaps we underestimated them, but it's too late to retreat now. We have their spawn. They will submit or watch them die. But deep in the ancient archives of his own people, there were warnings, written in languages long for. The Vengeance fleet assembled at the edge of human space like a storm gathering strength. Admiral Hyunwoo Park stood on the bridge of the flagship Wrath of Terra, watching as 200 warships formed battle lines that hadn't been seen for 3,000 years. Each ship carried volunteers whose bloodlines traced back to humanity's warrior past. These weren't career soldiers. They were teachers, engineers, farmers, and scientists who had answered an ancient call in their blood. But their ancestors had conquered half the galaxy, and that knowledge lived in their genes. Fleet reports. Ready, Admiral. Communications Officer Yejin Park announced. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly as she operated controls that had been designed for war. Admiral Park studied the tactical display. Red dots marked known Velthari positions, while blue dots showed human forces spreading across. Dozens of star systems. It was the largest military operation in 3 millennia. All ships, this is Admiral Park, he transmitted to the entire fleet. We hunt for our children. We don't stop until we find them. We don't negotiate with those who would steal the innocent. We are no longer the humanity that chose peace. We are the humanity that protects its own. In the war room deep within the eye, flagship, the greatest tactical minds of humanity worked around the clock. Colonel Minho Lee studied star charts while strategic analyst Yejin Park calculated jump routes. Cyber warfare specialist Junseo Kim monitored enemy communications, looking for any hint of where the children might be held. The Velthari left. A trail, Junseo reported. They hit 17 different systems on their way here. All of them had children. Dr. So-Min Lee leaned over the tactical display, her diplomatic training now focused on a single purpose. Show me the pattern. Where? Are they going? The star map lit up with red lines showing Velthari movement. What they saw made everyone in the room go quiet. They're not random raiders, Colonel Minho said grimly. This is a systematic harvesting operation. They've been taking children, from multiple species for months. How many? So-Min asked, though she dreaded the answer. Conservative estimate? Over 10,000 young beings from dozens of worlds. The room fell silent. The Velthari weren't just kidnappers. They were operating some kind of massive collection program. But what did they want with so many children? Captain Tai-Hyun Kim commanded the stealth reconnaissance ship Silent Vengeance, leading a small fleet of fast scouts deep into Velthari territory. His mission was simple: find the children and report back their location. What he found was far worse than anyone had imagined. Silent approach to the 4th planet, he ordered Lieutenant Sujin Park. All sensors on passive mode. The planet below them was covered in massive structures that pulsed with sickly light. Biomechanical factories stretched across entire continents, connected by networks of twisted metal and organic growth. Sir, I'm detecting massive energy signatures, sensor operator Jaewon Choi reported. Those aren't normal buildings. They're alive somehow. Captain Kim watched the readings with growing horror. Can you detect human life signs? Thousands of them, sir. But they're not on the planet's surface. They're in orbit. The main screen shifted to show a massive vessel hanging in space above the planet. It was larger than any ship in the human fleet, its hull covered in the same organic growths as the surface factories. That's their capital ship, Lieutenant Park breathed. The Soul Harvester. Sir, we need to get closer, Sergeant Jaewon suggested. We need to know what they're doing to the children. Captain Kim knew it was dangerous, but they had to know. He ordered the ship to move closer, using every stealth system they had. What they discovered in the Soul Harvester's holding bays made trained soldiers weep. Thousands of children from dozens of species floated in biomechanical pods, connected to machines that were slowly altering their bodies and minds. The Velthari weren't just taking children. They were transforming them into something else. They're turning them into slave soldiers, Captain Kim transmitted back to the fleet. The children are being converted into biomechanical weapons. Admiral Park received the report in his war room. Around him, officers struggled to control their rage as they heard what was being done to the children. How long? Admiral Park asked. The conversion process appears to take several months for full completion, Captain Kim reported. But Admiral, some of the pods show children who have been there for years. This has been going on much longer than we thought. Dr. So-Min Lee felt her legs give out. She sank into a chair as the full horror of the situation hit her. Ji-Yun was somewhere in that nightmarish ship, connected to machines that were trying to steal her humanity. We have to get them out, she whispered. All of them. The ship is heavily defended, Captain Kim continued. But sir, I think I can. Get a small team inside. We've identified what appears to be a weakness in their sensor grid. Admiral Park was quiet for a long moment. Around him, his officers waited for orders that would determine the fate of thousands of children. Negative, Captain. Your mission is reconnaissance only. Return to the fleet. But sir, those children need immediate rescue. Every day we wait is another day they're being converted. I understand, Captain. But we're going to need the entire fleet for this. Come home. We're going to war. Overlord Kethmore stood in the control chamber of the Soul Harvester, watching progress reports from his bioconversion laboratories. The human children were proving more resistant to the process than expected, but his scientists were making adjustments. The young human female from the agricultural moon shows exceptional resistance, his chief scientist reported. Her psychological profile suggests strong leadership potential. Kethmore studied the image of Jian Li floating in her conversion pod. Increase the neural conditioning. She will serve the Empire, or she will be consumed. War Prime Veltox approached with troubling news. Overlord, our scouts report massive human fleet movements. They have mobilized far more ships than our intelligence predicted. How many ships? Kethmore asked. Over 200 warships, with more being activated every day. And Overlord, these aren't the peaceful exploration vessels we've been tracking. These are actual warships from their ancient fleets. For the first time since the operation began, Kethmore felt something that might have been concern. Impossible. Our intelligence showed that humanity had abandoned warfare millennia ago. Perhaps our intelligence was incorrect, Overlord. Kethmore turned to study tactical displays of the approaching human fleet. The ships moved with purpose and coordination that spoke of military experience. Their formations were aggressive, designed for maximum destructive impact. No matter, he decided. We have their spawn. They will negotiate for their return or watch them die. Humans are too soft to risk their children's lives. But in the depths of the Soul Harvester's databanks, ancient records stirred, files captured, from long-dead civilizations contained warnings about a species that would burn the galaxy to save a single child. A species that had once been known by a simple phrase that translated roughly to the ones who never surrender their young. Those records had been ignored, dismissed as primitive superstition. Now, as human ships spread across Velthari space like an unstoppable plague, some deep programming began to whisper warnings that Kethmore was too proud to hear. Dr. Somin Lee stood in the armory of the Wrath of Terra, strapping on weapons that her diplomatic training had never prepared her for. But her ancestors had worn similar gear when they carved paths of conquest across the stars. "You don't have to do this," her brother Colonel Minho said. "You're not trained for combat operations." "My daughter is on that ship," Somin replied, checking her equipment with hands that no longer trembled. "I've read the old records. I know what our family is capable of when we're pushed too far." She picked up a ceremonial blade that had been passed down through generations of her family. The weapon had last been used by General Yunji Li during the conquest of the Valerian Empire. Now it would taste alien blood again. "The Velthari made a mistake," she continued. "They think we're weak because we chose peace. They're about to learn that we chose peace because we knew what we were capable of in war." General Yujin Seo reviewed the final battle plans with her command staff. The assault on the Soul Harvester would be the largest military operation in human history, requiring precise coordination between multiple fleets and special forces teams. "The orbital defenses are extensive," her tactical officer reported. "They have weapon platforms that could destroy our ships before we get close enough to launch rescue operations. Then we'll go through them," General Seo replied. "Our ancestors didn't conquer half the galaxy by being cautious. We hit them with everything we have, create chaos, and get our children out in the confusion." Captain Kim's reconnaissance team had found more than just the location of the children. They had discovered the Velthari's greatest weakness: arrogance. The aliens believed so completely in their superiority that they had never considered the possibility of defeat. "They don't understand what they've awakened," Captain Kim reported to Admiral Park. "They see us as the peaceful species we've been for 3,000 years. They have no idea what we were before that." Admiral Park stood before the great viewport of his flagship, watching stars that had once trembled at the sound of Hugh. The final battle began at the edge of the Andromeda Spiral, where the massive Velthari fleet had gathered around their capital ship, the Soul Harvester. Admiral Hyunwoo Park stood on the bridge of the Wrath of Terra, watching as his vengeance fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 200 human warships faced 3 times their number of alien vessels. The Velthari ships were larger, more heavily armed, and crewed by warriors who had conquered dozens of civilizations, but they had never faced humanity when their children's lives were at stake. "All ships, this is Admiral Park," he transmitted, across the fleet. "Today we end 3,000 years of peace. Today we remind the galaxy why our ancestors were feared. For our children." The response came back from 200 ships as one voice. "For our children." The battle erupted across space like a new star being born. Human ships moved with tactics that hadn't been seen since the Conquest Wars, employing strategies that their peaceful neighbors had hoped were lost forever. Captain Dae-Ho Kim led the fighter squadron Hell's Angels in a devastating attack on the Velthari cruiser line. His pilots flew with a reckless fury that bordered on suicidal, but their grandfathers' memories guided their hands. They dove between alien ships like wolves among sheep, their weapons tearing through hulls that had seemed invincible. "Target their sensor arrays," Captain Kim shouted over the communications. "Blind them before they can coordinate their defense." His fighters swarmed around the massive alien vessels, small and fast compared to their enemies but deadly beyond measure. One by one, Velthari ships lost their ability to see and communicate, leaving them vulnerable to the larger human warships moving in for the kill. Commander Yunsu Park coordinated boarding parties that attacked with primitive weapons when their advanced ones failed. Human Marines stormed Velthari ships with knives and clubs, fighting hand-to-hand in corridors designed for creatures twice their size. "Remember, they see us as weak," she shouted to her troops as they cut through an alien airlock. "Show them what weakness really looks like." The Marines fought with a savagery that terrified their enemies. Velthari warriors who had conquered worlds fell back before humans who fought with nothing but determination and ancestral rage. When their ammunition ran out, the humans used their fists. When their weapons broke, they used pieces of broken metal as clubs. But the real battle was taking place on the Soul Harvester itself. Dr. So-Min Lee led a special forces team through the massive ship's twisted corridors. Around her, soldiers moved with the precision of their ancestors, but she moved with something more powerful: the fury of a mother whose child had been taken. The ship's interior was a nightmare of biomechanical growth and pulsing organic walls. Creatures that were part machine and part alien flesh patrolled the passages, but they fell before the human advance like wheat before a scythe. "Conversion chambers are 2 levels down," reported technical specialist Sang-Min Park, reading from captured alien data. "Thousands of children in biopods." So-Min felt her heart racing as they fought deeper into the ship. Somewhere in this mechanical hell, Ji-eun was waiting to be saved. Somewhere in these twisted passages, her daughter was fighting to hold on to her humanity. They encountered their first real resistance at the entrance to the conversion chambers. Velthari elite guards, creatures bred specifically for war, blocked their path with weapons that could cut through steel. "Take cover!" "Colonel," Min-Ho Lee shouted as energy beams scorched the air around them. But So-Min didn't take cover. She walked forward into the enemy fire, her ancestor's blade gleaming in her hand. The Velthari guards focused their weapons on her, and she let them. Every shot they took at her was one they couldn't take at her team. The ceremonial sword that had once belonged to General Yoonji Lee drank alien blood as So-Min carved through the enemy guards. She moved like her ancestor had during the conquest of the Valerian Empire, with a grace that spoke of generations of warrior training. When the last guard fell, the team stood before the entrance to the conversion chambers. Beyond those doors lay thousands of children from dozens of worlds, all of them waiting to be saved. "Whatever you see in there," So-Min told her team, "remember that they're still children, they're still innocent, and they're still ours." The doors opened to reveal a sight that would haunt the team's dreams for the rest of their lives. Thousands of biopods stretched into the distance, each containing a child connected to machines that pulsed with sickly light. Some of the children had been there so long that their bodies showed signs of the conversion process. "My God," whispered Sergeant Jaewon Choi. "How many are there?" "All of them," So-Min replied, her voice breaking slightly. "Every child they've taken over the years." She ran through the rows of pods, searching for her daughter's face among the thousands. The children floated in nutrient fluid, their eyes closed, their bodies connected to machines that were slowly stealing their humanity. Ji-un! She called out, her voice echoing through the vast chamber. Ji-un, where are you? Then she saw her. In a pod near the center of the chamber, her daughter floated in the same artificial sleep as the others. But Ji-un's face showed resistance. Even unconscious, even connected to alien machines, she was fighting back. I found her, So-min whispered, pressing her hand against the pod's surface. I found my daughter. But as they began the rescue operation, alarms started sounding throughout the ship. Overlord Kethmore had discovered their presence. The alien warlord appeared at the chamber's entrance with his personal guard. He was massive, 3 meters tall with razor-sharp appendages and eyes that glowed with alien intelligence. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had conquered worlds. You will stop, he commanded. These spawn belong to the Empire now. They will serve us, or they will die. So-min turned to face him, still holding her ancestor's blade. Around her, her team prepared for what might be their final battle. But she had come too far to stop now. They're not your property, she said quietly. They're our children, and you made a very serious mistake when you took them. Kethmore laughed, a sound like grinding metal. You think your primitive weapons can harm me? I have conquered 17 civilizations. I have burned entire worlds. But you've never faced a human mother protecting her child. The battle that followed was brief but vicious. Kethmore's guards fell to the combined fire of the Special Forces team, but the Overlord himself was beyond their weapons. His personal shields deflected their energy beams, and his razor-sharp claws could cut through their armor. But So-min didn't rely on advanced weapons. She had something that Kethmore couldn't understand, the fury of humanity unleashed in defense of its young. She fought him with the ceremonial blade, dancing around his massive frame with speed that spoke of genetic memories passed down through generations. The sword that had once carved paths of conquest across the stars found alien flesh. Kethmore screamed as the blade pierced his defenses, cutting through scales that had turned aside energy weapons. Impossible, he gasped as So-min drove the weapon deeper. You are weak. You chose peace. We chose peace because we knew what we were capable of, So-min replied, twisting the blade. You just reminded us. Kethmore fell, his massive body crashing to the chamber floor. Around him, his empire's greatest weapon, the Soul Harvester, shuddered as human marines took control of its systems. Technical specialist Sang-min worked frantically to free the children from their pods. One by one, the biomechanical prisons opened, releasing young beings who had been trapped for months or years. Ji-un was among the first to wake. Her eyes opened slowly, focusing on her mother's face with confusion that gradually turned to recognition. Mom, she whispered. Is it really you? So-min pulled her daughter from the pod, holding her close for the first time in weeks. Around them, other children were waking up, calling out for their parents in dozens of different languages. We're here, So-min whispered to her daughter. We came for you. We came for all of you. Outside the Soul Harvester, the battle was ending. The Velthari fleet was in full retreat, their ships scattered and broken. Admiral Park's Vengeance fleet had done what seemed impossible. They had defeated an enemy 3 times their size through sheer determination and ancestral fury. The few surviving Velthari ships fled into the darkness between galaxies, carrying with them stories that would become warnings. They had learned something that the galaxy had forgotten. Humanity's 3,000 years of peace had not been weakness. It had been mercy, and mercy, once betrayed, became something far more terrible. As the rescue ships arrived to collect the freed children, Admiral Park transmitted a message that would be remembered throughout galactic history. To any species that might consider threatening our young, remember this day. Remember what happened to those who touched our children. We offered you peace, and you chose war. We showed you mercy, and you showed us cruelty. Learn from the Velthari's mistake. Our children are not your prey. They are our future, and we will burn the galaxy to protect them. The message echoed across the stars, carrying with it the promise that humanity had remembered its true nature. They were no longer just peacekeepers and diplomats. They were guardians, protectors, and when necessary, the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever known. 6 months after the Battle of Andromeda's Spiral, The galaxy had settled into a new reality. The rescued children were safe, but the universe they returned to was not the same one they had left. Ji-Un Lee stood on the observation deck of Terra. Prime Station, watching human warships patrol the space around the peaceful worlds. The ships were beautiful in their deadly efficiency, their hulls gleaming with weapons that had once been forbidden but were now necessary. "How are you feeling?" her mother asked, joining her at the viewport. Ji-Un touched the small scar on her wrist where the Velthari conversion machinery had been attached. The physical wounds had healed quickly, but the memories would take longer. "I'm okay," she said, and she mostly meant it. "The counselors say the nightmares will fade with time." Dr. Somin Lee had returned to her work at the Peace Institute, but her job had changed dramatically. Instead of just mediating disputes between species, she now focused on preventing the kinds of atrocities that the Velthari had committed. "Your therapy sessions are helping?" Somin asked. "Yes, and knowing that it won't happen again helps too." Ji-Un gestured toward the patrol ships. "They won't catch us defenseless again." The human military had been permanently expanded. No longer would they rely on symbolic peacekeeping forces. Fleet Admiral Eugene Seo had established the Children's Guard, an elite force dedicated to protecting young beings across all species. The Guard's headquarters orbited Terra Prime, a massive station, bristling with sensors and weapons. Their motto was carved into the station's hull in dozens of languages. "Never again." Admiral Hyunwoo Park stood in the council chambers of the Galactic Federation, addressing representatives from hundreds of worlds. His uniform was different. Now, it still bore symbols of peace, but it also carried the insignia of military command. "We learned something important 6 months ago," he told the assembled delegates. "Peace without the strength to defend it is just an invitation for evil to act. We tried peace through weakness, and our children paid the price." The alien representatives listened with expressions ranging from gratitude to unease. The peaceful humans they had known for 3,000 years were gone, replaced by guardians who would never again allow innocence to be threatened. "From this day forward," Admiral Park continued, "humanity offers a new kind of peace. Peace through strength. Those who threaten the innocent will face the full might of the human fleet. We will not negotiate with kidnappers. We will not bargain with slavers. We will destroy them." The declaration sent ripples throughout the galaxy. Some species welcomed the protection. Others worried about what humanity might become if their power went unchecked. Captain Tae-hyun Kim, now Admiral Kim, commanded the massive Dreadnought Guardian's Promise as it patrolled the Outer Rim. His ship was 10 times larger than his old exploration vessel, armed with weapons that could crack planets and defended by shields that could withstand stellar storms. "Sir, we're receiving a distress call," his communications officer reported. "The Zentari colonies are under attack by raiders." Admiral Kim didn't hesitate. "Set course immediately. Maximum speed. Signal the Third Fleet to join us." This was the ACE new reality. Humanity no longer waited for threats to develop. They responded to danger with overwhelming force, ensuring that aggressors learned the cost of preying on the innocent. The Zentari were a peaceful aquatic species that had never developed advanced weapons. For generations, they had relied on human protection, but it had always been diplomatic protection. Now they would see what military protection looked like. The raiders attacking the Zentari colonies never saw the human ships coming. Guardians. Promise emerged from hyperspace with its escort fleet, 36 warships that moved with deadly precision. "This is Admiral Kim of the Human Children's Guard," he transmitted to the raider fleet. "You have 60 seconds to withdraw from Zentari space or be destroyed." The raiders, a species called the Korthak, laughed at the ultimatum. They had been pillaging peaceful worlds for centuries, and 60 seconds seemed like a joke. 59. Seconds later, their laughter stopped. The human attack was swift and merciless. The raider ships were outmatched in every way. Their weapons couldn't penetrate human shields, their hulls cracked under human firepower, and their crews had never faced an enemy that fought with such calculated fury. Within minutes, the Korthak fleet was debris floating in space. The few survivors were captured and taken back to human space for trial. "The colonies are secure," Admiral Kim reported to Fleet Command. No casualties among the Zentari population. It was becoming a pattern. Across the galaxy, species that had preyed on the weak were learning that weakness was no longer acceptable to humanity. Protection came with a price, the complete destruction of anyone who threatened it. Dr. So-Min Lee visited the memorial garden on Terra Prime, where names of all the children taken by the Velthari were carved into crystal walls. Thousands of names from dozens of species, all of them saved by humanity's awakening. Ji-Yun joined her mother at the memorial, carrying flowers from their home garden. They placed the flowers at the base of the wall, honoring not just their own experience, but all the children who had suffered. "Mom," Ji-Yun said quietly, "I've decided what I want to do when I finish school." "What's that, sweetheart?" "I want to join the Children's Guard. I want to make sure this never happens to anyone else." So-Min felt a mixture of pride and concern. Her daughter had always been strong, but the Velthari experience had hardened that strength into something more focused. "It's dangerous work," So-Min said. "So is being defenseless," Ji-Yun replied. "The old way didn't protect us. The new way will." Across the galaxy, the Velthari survivors huddled on a barren world designated as their prison. Overlord Kethmore was dead, killed by a human mother defending her child, but his followers remained to contemplate their defeat. War Prime Veltox, now the highest-ranking survivor, spent his days writing warnings for any species that might consider threatening human children. The documents were part confession, part historical record, and part desperate plea. "They are not what they appear to be," he wrote. "For 3,000 years, we watched them choose peace over conquest, diplomacy over war. We thought this made them weak. We were wrong. They chose peace because they knew what they were capable of in war. They chose mercy because they understood the terrible cost of unleashing their true nature." The warnings would be distributed throughout the galaxy, carried by ships that fled human space in terror. They spoke of a species that had once conquered civilizations and could do so again if provoked. "Never threaten their young," the warnings concluded. "That is the one violation they will never forgive, the one crime they will never overlook. Touch their children, and they will show you why the universe once trembled at the mention of humanity." General Eugene Seo reviewed reports from across human space. The Children's Guard had grown to include volunteers from other species, beings who wanted to help protect the innocent. They trained together, fought together, and shared a single purpose. "Recruitment is up 300%, her aide reported. "Species that never had militaries are asking for training in defensive tactics." "Good," General Seo replied. "The more who can defend themselves, the fewer will have to defend for them." But the human fleets remained the backbone of galactic security. Their ships patrolled trade routes, protected colonies, and responded to threats with speed and overwhelming force. The galaxy had learned a new lesson. Peace was not the absence of conflict. Peace was the presence of those willing and able to defend it. Admiral Park stood once again on Terra Prime Station, but the view had changed. Human ships moved constantly through the space around the station, their crews alert and ready. The age of naive peace was over, replaced by something stronger and more lasting. "Sir," his aide approached with the daily reports. "The Council of Peaceful Worlds has requested increased human presence in their territory. Pirates have been avoiding their systems entirely since we established regular patrols." "Approved," Admiral Park replied. "Expand the patrol routes to include all their major trade lanes." It was working. The galaxy was actually becoming more peaceful, not because everyone chose to be good, but because the consequences of being evil had become too terrible to contemplate. Captain Sung-Ho Kim, the teacher who had survived the attack on Serenity, had returned to his work at the Multi-Species Academy. But his classroom was different now. Along with lessons about cooperation and understanding, he taught his students about vigilance and strength. "Peace is not a gift," he told his mixed species class. "Peace is something you must work for every day. You must be strong enough to protect it, brave enough to defend it, and wise enough to know when diplomacy ends and action begins." The children listened with the seriousness of beings who had seen what happened when evil went unchallenged. They understood that their playground was protected by ships whose crews would die before allowing another child to be taken. As the anniversary of the Battle of Andromeda Spiral approached, preparations began for a galaxy-wide celebration. It would honor not just the rescued children, but the new age of protected peace that had emerged from humanity's awakening. Ji-Yoon Lee, now 16 and preparing for her application to the Children's Guard Academy, stood once more on the observation deck.